This is you. Wave hello. You have a name, a past, a future, friends, memories, regrets, and dreams. Since you've made it this far, you already know these things. But how do you know what you're going to do with your life? Think about it. How many times in the past few months alone have you been asked where you're going to college? It's even more overwhelming to think there are almost 4,500 colleges in the US, 475 in New York alone. By 2018, 60% of job openings will require a college education. So, why would you pick a Christian school in Rochester, New York? Well, long ago in a galaxy not so far away, lived a dapper-looking fellow named B.T. Roberts. In B.T.'s day, only high rollers could afford to sit in the front at church where they could be near the heat and hear the preacher. This did not sit well with him. You see, B.T. believed there could be a place where everyone could come together as equals. So after some thought, he started the Free Methodist Church and invited everyone to the front. Then, in 1866, Roberts Wesleyan College was launched to expand his vision by giving everyone a front seat to a transformative education. That brings us to here and now. Take Renee Colon, for example. Her hands-on business experience at Roberts gave her the tools she needed to open Rochester's best fair trade coffee shop. Or James Harrington, who started the Ugandan Water Project to help some of the world's poorest people find practical solutions to end crippling poverty. There's Jen Scher, who discovered pole vaulting at Roberts. She soared all the way to a world record and an Olympic gold medal for Team USA in 2012. The list goes on and on. But let's get back to you. You have unlimited and untapped potential, with the whole world at your fingertips. You have purpose and meaning, and have been given unique gifts and talents by God. Do you feel that you're called to be a professional whose heart beats to change the world? If you're looking for a close-knit community that will challenge you, Roberts might just be the place for you.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be back with you guys this year. I had so much fun last year with you all. So I'm going to hand James these cards. These are interest cards for Roberts, and if any of you want to learn more about it, if you're in high school, fill one of these out, and if you bring them to the table after in the back, we've got a bunch of these really cool t-shirts. I think there's like 15 of them for the first 15 people to bring their cards back. That's just for high school. So check those out, and then they'll send you more info. And today, James and I are going to be doing a brand new seminar that we call Textinars, and it's about kind of like guy-girl relationship textinar stuff, but the cool part is that if you have questions during this time that you want to talk about more afterwards, you can text us your questions. So right up here, you can text that code, Tiffany Dawn, 713, and as along with your question to that number, that 37607. So if you have any questions as we're going, text those in, and we're going to spend the last 10-15 minutes talking about your questions. So, oh guys, I'm excited to be here. So let me tell you, James and I actually grew up together. Our dads were housemates back in the 80s, believe it or not, but we lost touch for years and reconnected just like 2.5 years ago. So we've been officially together for only 1.5 years now, and we've been married 4 months, and we have a lot in common. Like, he actually loves shopping. Obviously, he was like the one for me. Like, we love shopping, we love traveling, we love cooking, we have a lot of things in common. But even though we have a lot in common, we're also very different people.
Yeah, and some of those differences are very dramatic. Like, when I finish a bowl of yogurt, I always get a spatula and clean it out so I don't lose any yogurt. But Tiffany thinks it's a waste of time to ever use a spatula.
Why would I use a spatula? That's like 5 minutes of my life.
It doesn't take 5 minutes.
Okay, does anybody here even know what a spatula is?
Of course they know what a spatula is. Everyone knows what a spatula is.
Yeah, I don't use a spatula.
And you know what's also interesting is I grew up with 3 sisters, so I thought that I understood girls. No way. When I would cry, it would be like if something really serious would happen in my life, like a milkshake would spill, like something really drastic. But Tiffany seems to cry all the time.
It's for anything. Like, I'll just be sitting there and we'll be having a conversation and I just get really teary-eyed and I'm like, and James is like, what happened? What did I do? It must be something awful, like who died? And I'm like, you're just being so sweet. I can't even take it right now. I cry over everything. And something I've learned is different between us is that apparently guys don't get hints. So, like...
I'm not even sure what this hint thing is.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like, I could be like, I'm fine. Why are you even asking if I'm fine? Obviously, I'm fine. Like, could it be any more clear that I am not fine right now?
Is it really that difficult for you to say, I am not okay?
Yeah,
4 words.
4 words. So I've had to learn
Right.
that guys don't get hints. So as we've been married and realizing like these differences between us, even though we have a lot in common, we've been like, wow, if we're this different, even though we're so similar, everybody in the world is so different. And so today we want to talk about some of the differences that you'll see sometimes between guys and girls. Although sometimes it's just different personalities too.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Bible, you know, you hear this verse in Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40, when this man asks Jesus, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replies, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these 2 commandments." So if it all boils down to this idea of love God and love your neighbor, then we really need to learn how to love people who are different than us. So how do we do that? How do we love somebody who's so different than us? And, you know, Jesus gives us a hint. He says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But what if what you want done to you is not what somebody else wants done to them?
So I have a good example of this. If you want to show love and affection to Tiffany, you can get her a pedicure gift certificate.
It's like heaven on my feet.
Those. But if someone got me a pedicure gift certificate, I would think they were trying to make fun of me. I would not be happy.
Okay, I really think she needs to try a pedicure. Like, girls, have you had a pedicure?
I'm not going to try a pedicure.
And is it amazing or what? It is like, okay, you're all just staring at me. It is the best thing ever.
I really don't want to get a pedicure. I just don't want one.
So we want to talk today about how are some ways that we can show God's love to people who are different than us, specifically in 3 main areas. And these 3 areas are attraction, friendship, and image. So we're going to talk about how to show God's love in these ways today. And do you want to pray for us and then get us started in the first area?
Absolutely. Our loving Father in heaven, we thank you so much. We thank you so much that you have brought us all here today. And we thank you that your Spirit is at work in our hearts. We pray that we would be open to what you have to teach to Tiffany and I and to everyone here. And we thank you so much for all the incredible ways you love us. Amen. All right, so let's talk about attraction. Attraction to people of the opposite sex. I remember when I was a young boy and I first found myself being attracted to girls, I thought, whoa, all of a sudden I just want to look. And, but I was kind of obsessed with being the perfect Christian kid. And so I thought, well, the perfect Christian kid probably isn't interested in girls, so I'm just going to pretend that I don't notice and I'm not interested. I wanted to be that kid that parents are like, oh, that kid is so well behaved and so great. I was kind of a goody two-shoes. But anyway, so I didn't want to actually talk to girls or show that I was interested. So I decided that I would try to get to know girls from afar. So I'd like watch them and see how they talk to their friends and see what sort of clothes they're wearing. And I thought that then I could realize what girls I liked and which girls I didn't like.
But without ever talking to them.
I had no idea how to talk to girls, so no, very scary.
That's fair.
And I'd make a lot of judgments about girls, and one of the girls that I had made a judgment about was Tiffany. When we were little, I remember meeting her, and she was surrounded by a group of girls, and probably 8 years old. She was like, guess who my best friend is? And they were like, oh, is it me? Is it me? There was that phase where everyone is really obsessed with who's everyone's best friend is. And she said, nope, it's Jesus. But maybe one of you can be one of my second best friends. Of course, I was like, oh my goodness, too spiritual. I'm not interested in her. And look where we are now.
Go figure. Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because I grew up and I was kind of the opposite way. I was like this little kid prowling around Sunday school at 5 years old looking for the boy with the biggest Bible, and I'm just like, where is he? He will make a great martyr someday, so that I'm just interested. I was very, very boy crazy.
Oh, but another way I tried to get to know girls from afar was by checking them out. I think you know what I mean. I would see a girl that I thought looked cute and I would think, oh, I'm just gonna look, just steal another glance. And I always thought that no girls ever noticed that I did that. It turns out that's not true.
Yeah, we notice.
I'm kind of embarrassed for myself now.
So it's interesting though, because I think girls check people out and guys check people out. Like, it goes both ways. But it's interesting because I remember, well, first let me talk about this just from a girl's perspective. If you're in a group of girls and you're always the girl who's never being checked out, you start to think, what's wrong with me? Like, does nobody notice me? Do I not have anything to offer? And if you're the girl in the group who always is being checked out, you're like, does anybody notice me for more than what I look like? Like, what is this? So it's interesting how so many decisions we make impact more than we think they would. Like, for me, I think, oh, what's the big deal if I just check somebody out? But it can actually impact somebody in a deeper way than we would think. And you know, in high school and college, I used to think, man, why are guys so shallow? I really just thought guys were shallow. Well, guess what? One day I realized I was more shallow than any guy I had ever met in my entire life. I went to go to this young adults meeting at my church. There were like 200 young adults here. And I go and at that point in my life, I was like looking for this guy who was like 6'3" tall, dark hair, worship leader, youth leader, right, plays guitar. And I'm like looking for this guy, and it was so interesting because I came home from that event and I was like, said to my friend, there were no guys at the event. It was so weird, like there were no guys there. Okay. There were literally 100 guys there, but I was so shallow that I went and just didn't see what I was looking for and just didn't notice anybody else. So I think that this is something that's both a guy's issue and a girl's issue. And you know, another way that we sometimes just look at the surface and don't take the time to look deeper and really get to know people. Another example of this is through what's called sexting. And this is something I'm guessing probably many of you have never been involved in this, but most of you probably like know a family member or friend of a friend who has, because this is becoming a really big issue in our culture. And what I mean by sexting is when somebody sends a picture of themselves to somebody else. And almost always the research shows that even if the picture was only meant for that one person, they'll almost always forward it on to like 2 or 3 other people, and those 2 or 3 other people almost always forward it on to 2 or 3 other people, and it's like this chain effect. And the statistics show that about 30 to 40% of teens are involved in sexting. And that's why we want to talk about it today, because it's becoming a big issue. But that being said, I think a lot of times with things like this, people will feel this pressure sometimes or think everybody's doing it. But what the research is essentially showing is that 60 to 70% of teens are not sexting. So the majority are actually not, which is a good thing.
And one of the things that's really interesting is how differently I think that it affects guys and girls. So a lot of times for guys, you think, oh, guys I know that I play baseball or basketball with are doing this. This is a cool thing. It's kind of like trying like a new kind of pizza, like something I've never done before, and it's kind of edgy and it's exciting, and I don't really think there's any consequences. So other guys are texting, asking girls for pictures. I'm going to do it too. But I think what guys don't realize is something like this is a lot more like a car accident than trying a new kind of pizza. You know, sometimes it happens really fast, but sometimes the ramifications last for days or weeks or months or sometimes even years.
Yeah, and I think girls look at it a little differently, and obviously every person looks at it differently, but I think for girls sometimes it's this idea of wanting to be noticed by guys or wanting a guy to like you more, and a girl might think, if I send this picture, maybe I'll be more accepted, maybe somebody will like me more or notice me more, and maybe it'll give me more value. But the thing is, you know, sometimes it might make you feel more popular for a hot minute, but it's never the kind of acceptance that we crave. It's never somebody getting to know you as a person beneath the surface and giving you that love that we crave. So I think at this age in life, it's easy to just look at things in the moment and be like, what consequences could this possibly have long term? And instead of looking at it and saying, wow, how could this impact me and other people down the road?
Yeah, it's something that, or one of the many consequences that I've seen among friends who participated in things like sexting or even pornography, is that they just get focused on how attractive a girl is and how sexually aggressive she is. And so they think, wow, what really matters for a girl that I date is how beautiful she looks and how aggressive she is or how into me she is. And I know a lot of guys that have tried to date girls just based on those characteristics and thinking, wow, my friends think I'm so cool because this girl I'm with is so cute. And a lot of those guys have gone on to have some of the most miserable relationships, unfulfilling relationships with people that didn't understand them, people who were always getting angry with them, and they were just in a lot of pain and misery because they didn't really understand the full picture of a real fulfilling relationship.
Yeah. And for me, I never was involved in sexting. That actually was not a thing at all when I was in high school or college. But I do remember one time being with that guy that I told you about when I was here a couple years ago. And when I was with this guy, I remember we did a lot of things that we shouldn't have done. And one day I let him take this inappropriate picture of me. And at the time, in that moment, I thought, maybe this is will make him like me more, maybe this is kind of cool or whatever. And it didn't feel too bad, but as soon as he left my house, I remember just feeling like my stomach fell out of my body. And I was like, what did I just do? What if somebody else sees this picture? What if he shows this to someone and I'm texting him, please delete that immediately? And I just felt so guilty, I knew this was not honoring to God. And, it was scary in the moment, but what's interesting is how it can affect you in the long term. And that's what I didn't realize, because not only is there that, once the picture is on someone else's phone, you have zero control over it, so that's scary. But also, down the road, that was more than a decade ago, and now I'll be with James, and he's this incredible guy. And we'll be out somewhere and I'll see this girl who I think is prettier or sexier or whatever than me. And my immediate response is, he probably wishes he was with her because of how she looks. And it's not just because of that picture, but our society as a whole treats women like objects, as objects of lust a lot of times. It says what a woman is worth is her body and her skin, and what she can do for a guy, basically. And that's just not true. But I remember just kind of falling into that trap, even with thinking James would think that. And so one day I told James, I was like, do you wish you were with that girl because she's prettier? And he was looked at me in shock, and he's like, no, I don't love you just because I think you're beautiful or just because I think that you're sexy. I love every part of you. When we're out with friends and I see the way you interact with people, that's really attractive to me. And when I see how you love God, that's really attractive to me. And he was like, I don't just like you because of one area of attraction. There's so many different facets. That physical part is just one small part of who you are as a person, and I'm attracted to all of you. And that was very healing for me to hear.
Yeah, because I think a really healthy and fulfilling relationship is based on a total understanding and mutual respect of another person. And, girls, don't be tricked into thinking that a guy is going to respect you more just because you give him a picture that he's asking for. And guys, other guys might think it's cool that you're doing this, but it really doesn't make you any more of a man to be asking for pictures or seeing them.
Yeah, really, when people are real men and real women, they're able to guard each other and protect each other. And that's something, we know in our Christian faith that this is not something that honors God. We know it's not a way of guarding our brothers' hearts and eyes. It's not a way of protecting our sisters. It actually makes people targets often of bullying and cyberbullying and whatever. So we know it's not honoring to God, but actually our culture too is saying this is a big deal. This is a serious issue. And there's actually 40 plus states have made teen sexting laws, including Rhode Island, which actually makes it a crime not only to have a picture on your phone or forward it, but to even take that picture of yourself and send it in the first place is actually a crime now. Go figure. So yeah, this is just another way that we sometimes look at the surface instead of taking the time to look deeper and get to know and really care about somebody.
But we don't want you to think that it's just in middle school or high school and college that you deal with this issue of judging people based on their appearance. This is something that is very prevalent among adults in our culture, and really, I think, in all cultures. It's just part of the human experience. Just like people need to eat and sleep every day, their tendency is to judge people based on the outside. There's this really interesting story from the Bible in the book of Samuel. And Samuel is a prophet in Israel. He hears directly from God. God speaks to him. And God tells him one day, Samuel, you need to go to this town. I'm going to pick a new king. And so go, and I'll tell you which guy it is. So Samuel goes, and he stands in front of the group of the family, and he says, wow, God, this guy is perfect. He's so strong and tall and handsome. He's a great choice. And I'm going to read to you what God says to Samuel. This is in 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on his height, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And so, Samuel, the most spiritual man in Israel, looked at the outward appearance. We're going to have trouble all our lives just looking at the outward appearance instead of looking at the heart.
Yeah. So this is really one way to pause, take a step back, and learn how to show God's love to people who are different from you in the area of attraction. It's to step back and look deeper. And yeah, we want to be with somebody we're attracted to, but there's more to life than just what somebody looks like. So take a step back, look at who they are as a person, and get to know people on a deeper level. And a great way to learn how to do this is in our friendships, because whatever stage of life we're in, whether dating or not, young or old, we're always going to have friendships. James likes to say they're like the foundation of life, which is so true. And it's easy to do the same thing with your friendships. It's easy to say like, oh, I want to be friends with those people because they seem really cool, or they are the kind of people that I want people to associate with me with. But it's really important to take the time to look deeper and make friendships based on who somebody really is instead of just on those surface things. So let's turn now and talk about friendship.
You know, there are a lot of misconceptions about what friendship really is. I know when I was growing up, I thought for a while I had to be best friends with everybody. You know, what I've learned now is most people only have maybe one or two or maybe three best friends, and then a lot of people they're friendly with. I used to get so disappointed too when people didn't want to seem to be my friend. I'd get really excited about being friends with them, and they just weren't that interested for whatever reason. And eventually I stopped taking it personally because I realized sometimes people just don't have time or interest, and that's okay. And also, sometimes I have friends, but not me. I don't have a really good friend. I realized a lot of times God had put people right in front of me that I could be friendly to. So they might not be a really good friend to me, but I had the opportunity to show God's love to them. And that was really, really meaningful.
Yeah. And there's different seasons for different friendships. My sister Amy is a senior in high school, and she is the most brilliant person you'll ever meet, oh my goodness. But she said to me that she was looking at her life, and she's like, I have a lot of friends, but I'm realizing that after this year, I'm not going to see most of them again. So who are the people I really want to invest in? That it takes more time, but I'm really going to be a part of their lives and invest in them. And she's still like so welcoming and friendly to everybody she meets. I mean, I'm not talking about mean girls here where it's like, you can only sit at table on Wednesday with me if you wear pink. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But she is welcoming and friendly to everybody, but she has these few people that she's really investing in this season. And so what happens if one of those people, as I know it is for my sister, if one of those people you really want to invest in is somebody of the opposite gender, what happens then?
You know, I think it is so important too to have friends of the opposite gender. I know sometimes guys or girls think, oh, we don't want to talk to them, it's so different, or that would be strange. But I remember in college, we had this friend who he didn't have any sisters, he'd never really talked to girls. And one day he was like, guys, I think I've met the one. And we're like, well, how do you know she's the one? Well, we started talking after class, and we've even studied together. We're like, all right, come on, dude. You've never really even talked to girls. Of course you think she's the one. Like, you don't know anything about girls.
Seriously, yeah, I think that these opposite gender relationships are so healthy and so important to have, but it's also important to realize that they are different. So one of my really good friends, right after I broke up with that guy I told you about, one of my really good friends was this guy named Austin. And it was very healing for me to be friends with him and to see how a good man acted and treated people and to really learn from him and get his perspective, which was so different than mine. But I also realized that as he was one of my really good friends for about 12 years, I realized that these friendships are different, and there's a few ways they're different. Number one, eventually the friendship is going to change. So like Justin, Yeah, Justin and his wife got married 24 hours before we did. I think they were racing. It was kind of annoying. So they got married right before us. And so now, like, Justin and I would never go out and get coffee, just the two of us. We wouldn't talk on the phone, just the two of us, but we're couple friends. So James and I and Justin and his wife all will go out to dinner together or catch up together. So the friendship changes, which is different and something to just be aware of. Another thing to be aware of is that with an opposite gender friend, all of a sudden, it's like, it can happen so fast that suddenly, one minute you're just friends, and the next minute you're like, look at those eyes.
This happens almost every time.
I've never noticed eyes like that before, you know? And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, I think I like him, I think we're in love, like, we're gonna get married, it's gonna be amazing, like, and it can happen so suddenly and so fast that you develop feelings. So it's important to guard your heart and your mind. If you're gonna be just friends, then be just friends in your mind. Because wherever you let your mind go and what you're thinking about, your emotions are gonna follow and your actions will follow. So some of the ways that we guarded our hearts in our relationship was, first off, what was I thinking about? Like, and what situations was I putting myself in? So if I'm in this situations where it's just one-on-one all the time and it seems like romantic settings, then I'm gonna start to develop feelings for the person. So it's good to hang out in groups, like go out and get coffee with lots of people around, you know? Like with a girlfriend, I'd go up to, you know, cuddle on the couch in her apartment and just kind of hang out and watch a movie, but I wouldn't do that with Justin because it wouldn't be the same. So it's important to know what will change, to guard your heart, and lastly, to communicate. So one of the things I loved about Justin was that he would every few months talk about where we were and be like, so I feel like we're just supposed to be friends. Is that good with you? What do you think? And then we could talk about it and nobody felt like they were being led on. So it's important to keep communicating and not just assume you know what somebody's thinking, but also not like lead somebody on by not communicating.
So I think that the most important question to ask in whatever stage of life that you're in, whether you feel like you have a ton of friends or not that many friends, is to ask, who has God given me to invest in? Sometimes it's someone who's really close to you. Sometimes it's someone who doesn't seem to have many friends, but it's your opportunity to show God's love to them. That's an exciting thing. But I know for me, one of the things that kept me a lot of times from really investing in the people that were right in front of me was I was so obsessed with my image. I was so obsessed with the people that I was seen with the kind of clothes I wore, with the way I did my hair, with the way I walked, and especially with the kind of sneakers I wore. And, you know, it was funny, I was so interested in how I looked. I couldn't even care about other people because I wasn't even paying attention to them. I was just looking at me. Yeah,
so let's talk about image. I know for me, when I was in college, image was a big thing for me. I wanted to look this certain way, have a certain persona and personality, and none of it was bad, but none of it was really me. And I remember one day just thinking, man, I might seem to have some more friends right now, but are they really even my friends? Because do they really even know me underneath this fake image I'm putting up? And if they really did know me, would they even like me? And I realized that we really desire acceptance as people. And Proverbs, let's see, it's Proverbs 19:22 has this very interesting verse that says, what a person desires is unfailing love. And there's this desire in our hearts for this acceptance, for this kind of love. But sometimes we try to just make this image to make ourselves be a person that we think people will like instead of being really who God made us to be. And that can actually, like James said, blind us from loving others because we're so focused on ourselves.
And don't get us wrong, acceptance of others is so important. Everyone wants to be accepted. But if you get in a situation where the only thing you focus on is being accepted by other people, and the thing that you really care about is being accepted by other people, it's kind of like the time that I ate a whole bag of potato chips for dinner. Can anyone here eat a whole bag of potato chips in one sitting? Good, we'd have some takers. Yeah, not difficult to do. But what if you had only potato chips for dinner? I tried it once, and I thought it was great. Oh, it was so good. And then towards the end, those potato chips didn't taste so good. And then about an hour later, I felt terrible because what my body really needed was a balanced meal with some potato chips. But no, I just binged ate potato chips. And so that's what it can be like if all you focus on is acceptance by other people. Eventually, even when you get the acceptance, you'll feel really hollow and shallow and think, what? All that for this? This is terrible.
Yeah, and we do need acceptance, but what's so interesting is how we find it. So the first place we find it, that you probably all have in the back of your head already, the first place we need to find it is really in Christ. Like realizing that he has accepted us, he does love us, that we are accepted in him. And the second way that sometimes we don't talk about as much, the way to get acceptance is actually to give acceptance. Is this idea of how the kingdom of God is kind of like this upside down kingdom in some ways. It's like it's better to give than receive. The last shall be first. He who's the least will be the greatest. Like it's this upside down idea. And the same way works for this idea of acceptance or this idea of love. If we want to be accepted and loved, we need to show others that acceptance and love. I remember being really nervous about a certain social situation, this party I was going to, and I talked to my mentor about it. And she was like, Tiffany, if you want to feel better about yourself, stop thinking about how you feel about yourself. Instead, go in there and try to make everybody else feel comfortable and welcome and loved. And then you're going to feel better about yourself, and they'll feel better, and you'll have more friends. And it really worked like that. So it was crazy. I just started to try and I realized that the more I focused on others and showing them God's love, instead of focusing on just myself, the more I felt better about myself and the more friends I really made, like real friendships I made. So a real way to gain this acceptance is to give it. So today we've talked about how we show God's love to people who are different from us, and specifically opposite gender, but these apply to everybody in life because everybody's different. And so in these areas of attraction, friendship, and image, we want you guys to take a minute to think about how you can really show God's love to others. How can you, in those three areas, look beneath the surface and really get to know someone for who they are and show them that love and acceptance? So I'm going to ask you a question in just a second here that I want you to pray about for just a minute. And while you're praying about it, Mrs. Wright and Mr. Hunley are going to come up and they're going to join us for your Q&A time. So also finish texting in any questions. They're completely anonymous. We can't even see the phone number they're linked to. So finish texting in any questions you have, and then we're going to go over some of them with the four of us. But in the meantime, let me ask you this question, and you can take a minute to pray about it. So go ahead and bow your heads, or close your eyes, or whatever you need to do. And here's the question. Lord, what do you want me to do differently so that I can better show your love to others? Lord, what do you want me to do differently so that I can better show your love to others? Go ahead and ask the Lord that. Lord, thank you so much for how much you love us and the opportunities you give us to love others. And I pray that you just continue all day today and all week and year and the rest of our lives showing us how to love people better. In Jesus' name, amen. So Mrs. Wright and Mr. Hunley, if either of you have, for each of these questions, please feel free to just share the mics. Let us know what you want to add to. Please add to everything. So the first question I want to look at is this one. I think this is a great question. How do we love others that we don't like? Isn't that the real question? So whoever would like to start.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways. Sometimes the person that doesn't like you is a bully, and you feel like this person is picking on you, and it can be very difficult because sometimes you can't even get away from this person. And a lot of times in a situation like that, you need to involve an adult. You need to go to an adult you respect and say, look, this is how I feel. I realize that other people might feel differently, but this is how I feel. Then in other situations, sometimes the person that you don't like is just kind of annoying to you. And you think, oh, I just wish this person would kind of leave me alone. So you don't really feel bullied. And I think in a lot of times in that situation, it's kind of important to pray and to think, wow, you know, maybe this person doesn't have any friends, and so they're just looking for friendship in a really odd way. But that too is oftentimes a good situation to talk to an adult that you trust. Because a lot of times they can see more than perhaps you can see and kind of help guide you as to the wisest thing to do.
I'd like to share quickly an experience I had in college, which has stayed with me throughout my life. When I was in college and I had just become a believer and was part of a small prayer group, and this was like 6 or 7 students who met at least 3 times a week for prayer. And as a sophomore, there was a guy who joined my prayer group, they called them action groups in InterVarsity, who was the most annoying person to me. And I said, how am I going to stay in this prayer group with this guy in it? He just drives me crazy. But here I was, a believer, and I knew that I was supposed to love him, and I totally could not do it myself. And I started to pray, and I saw this miraculous change God did in my heart to make me actually love him. And I went, oh my gosh, that was a miracle. Not only could I stay in the group, but I actually became a friend. And ever since then, when people have told me how difficult their relationships were, I said, start praying for that person and ask God to change your heart. Admit that you can't do it on your own and ask him to do it, because that is one of the most wonderful miracles he does.
That's awesome.
I think it's a great question, because we are called to love our neighbor as ourselves. It's the second greatest commandment. And but if you have difficulty liking the person, how do you get past that? And I found in my life that a lot of times it's about time, and it's about openness to the possibility that there may be more to that person than you realize. Not that you have to be best friends with that person, but give the person a chance after chance after chance. And with time, I've discovered it's actually difficult or impossible for me to dislike someone over a long period of time if I keep my eye on them and I'm open to the possibility that there's more to them. The first example that jumps to my mind is actually at a previous school, a student I had, who I had difficulty liking because this kid was mean. He was mean to other people in the class, and I was constantly having to referee and protect the other members of the class from this mean kid. And then I had student-parent conferences, parent-teacher conferences, and guess what? His father was mean. His father was meaner than he was. He was mean to the kid's mother. He was mean to the people around him. And I thought, this is the model this kid has grown up with. And so I have the opportunity to be a different kind of model for this kid, to have some kind of influence, maybe not as powerful as his father's, but some kind of influence in this kid. There's more going on in this kid's life than I ever even realized. And I eventually came to discover other aspects of this kid and to be able to like him. And so I think it's a lot about time and openness to the possibility that there may be more to that person.
That's great. Thank you. Here's another question that I especially want to get your input on, Tiffany. What's the difference between dressing nice and having a good self-image versus dressing to impress others?
Oh, wow, that's such a good question. I might need a minute to think, so if any of you have a thought, go ahead and add it.
Well, I think for me, a lot of it comes with, you have to take some time, like even when you're choosing your outfit or getting dressed, to really think about, why am I doing this? Are thoughts going through my head of what people are going to think? And if so, you need to kind of take a step back and think, wow, what am I doing this? Why? And I think praying about it and just asking God to help you understand what you're doing and help you change is so important.
And I think too, like I chose this outfit today because I think this outfit is awesome. Like I found this shirt in Nashville and I was like, I needed that shirt. And I do think like when I do dress, I do think like, oh, do I think this is cute or not? And I am aware of what I think other people will think of the outfit. And I think that's normal and that's okay. But where the line is where your sense of worth comes from and your identity. So if you're looking at it like this outfit is gonna make me more valuable as a person, or this outfit is gonna show people that they can love me, then that's where it gets like not healthy. But if you're thinking like, oh, I think this outfit is cute, I think my friends will like it, I think that's totally normal as long as it's not like where your worth is coming from.
All right, here's another question I think is great. Why is it that I get close to people and then they forget me in our friendship?
I think that happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard, and there's no easy way to say it. It's really hard. It is. And it is a human experience too. I'll start with that.
I think sometimes it's easy to think, if you're in a moment in time when you feel like your friends have left you, and I think I've felt that way so many times I can't even count. In middle school and high school and college and after college, I always feel like, wow, I thought that person liked me a lot more than they seem to be acting right now. And some of that is sometimes the way that you perceive the issue. Sometimes I'm guilty of sometimes being a little overly dramatic about what's happening. So that's one thing. But then sometimes another thing is, people are all broken. And none of us are completely faithful. And so part of being a friend is learning to be very forgiving of the ways that people forget you and sin against you. And then the last thing I said is sometimes you're in a season of life where you don't have a lot of friends. And in that situation, I think you want God to be your friend, because God is a friend who never leaves you or fails you. And there's almost always people that you can be friends to who don't have friends, and I think that can be a very fulfilling thing.
And I know there's been times in my life when I felt really invisible, and I just felt like God put on my heart during those times, like, Tiffany, I see you, and that needs to be enough for you. And so I think it can be a time to really grow in your walk with God too, and get to know Him as the one who does see you and accept you. And it's a really amazing opportunity, even though it's really hard. And I think also sometimes in certain situations, it could make sense to ask the person, be like, am I doing something that I don't know that I'm doing that's hurtful to other people? And kind of get some feedback like that from either that person or an adult you trust.
One of the contexts that I think this can happen is when there's a way that relationships develop quickly and intensely, and then kind of the situation changes, and then the friendships can change. So for me, I was always involved in plays. We had a very active theater group when I was in high school, and that's an intense situation where you get very close with people very quickly. And I would interpret that as, we're now friends. And then the play would end, and maybe those relationships would continue, but often they would just kind of fizzle. And it's tempting to think, all right, was I just not interesting enough or fun enough to keep that person's attention? And I think I eventually came to realize that actually everybody's on a journey, everybody's traveling in some direction, and sometimes, though distant from me, it's not necessarily a reflection on me. It may be just a reflection on their own journey and where their life has taken them socially or emotionally or whatever the case may be. And I would always kind of snap back to those few, kind of 2 or 3 people, fellow dorks, honestly, who could be my, ongoing friends, and the rest, I was thankful for the time I had with those people, and then I would kind of say goodbye to them, and those relationships might kind of change or even end.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more, so I want to ask this. This is a great question. How can I deal with social anxiety?
Oh, you go right ahead.
I think for me, that story of really focusing on other people instead of on myself, that was hugely helpful for me personally, because it kind of took my eyes off of my social anxiety, which made it so I wasn't as aware of it. And that helped a lot, just to focus on loving other people instead of on what people were thinking of me. But I know that can be a very big thing to feel like you can push through. And sometimes having another friend that you trust there with you in an anxious situation can be helpful, or having some kind of support. It could even just be a Bible verse you have in your pocket that you can pull out and remind yourself of how much God loves you. Little things like that can also help support you. So.
And I think it's just important to remember that you are probably questioning what you're wearing and how your hair looks and how you look at people and what your hands are doing, but most people don't notice any of that. In fact, the night I kind of reconnected with Tiffany, we hadn't seen each other since we were kids. She had just gotten what I now understand was a horrible, horrible haircut. Her bangs were really crooked, and I have no memory of that. Absolutely no memory of that haircut. And in Tiffany's mind, it was the defining event of that entire month for her.
That's true.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think one of the biggest gifts that we can give each other, so this is focusing on others rather than your own social anxiety, is to help people feel comfortable with who they are. So even as we interact with them, to not focus on how your hair looks today or what you're wearing, but who you are as a person. And I hope that you experience that amongst yourselves. I remember one of the times we had an introduction to the high school by some of the upperclassmen were sitting with the freshmen and kind of helping them get to know what to expect. And several of them were saying, just be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. And if you can give that as a gift to others, allow them to be themselves. They don't have to fit some mold or some image. You will be so much freer to enjoy life, enjoy each other, and enjoy the real person for who they really are. And any of those images that you try to keep, you can't keep those up forever anyway. So be real, take off the mask. I think that's part of what you talked about last year, is taking off those masks. Be real, get to know people for who they really are, and let them know who you really are, because those are the relationships that are going to last, that are going to be how you choose the person you want to live with for the rest of your life, and that will really give you that fulfillment.
And who you really are, if you're anything like me, might be a little bit of a sort of awkward, dorky person. And, you know, and so what if that's who you are? Is that who I should be at a party, awkward and dorky? I'm just gonna give you a little personal tip from Hunley, is embrace it. Just go with it. And that's how and you know, I've gone from a situation feeling really kind of uncomfortable and awkward in social situations to now being totally 100% fine. And one of the secrets is related to what these folks were saying, which is to just show an interest in other people. Ask someone a question about themselves. It is the key. It is the secret to success in social situations. What do you do? What are you interested in? Do you play any sports? You know, where are you from? A couple questions, and then a follow-up question, and a follow-up question showing someone interest. Even if they look at you and they say, this looks like a dorky person, if a dorky person comes up to them and shows an interest in them and shows a little bit of care for them, they're like, all right, they're a little bit of a dork, but they're a nice person. I'm going to get into a conversation with this person. Just go with it, embrace it, and yeah, that outward focus and an interest in other people can really help.
I love that.
Well said, well said.
Do you want to pray to close us out in just a second? And also, if you guys, I know there were more questions than that. We have a blog we're starting to answer further questions up on the website, so you can see that there. And if you have interest cards, James and I will be at the back table. You can turn those in for a shirt.